One, Melody Deering here, Newsmail. It's going to be a tough show today because we're going to sort through all the various conspiracies and reactions around the Charlie Kirk assassination and determine what's bogus and what's true. I hate to do this. It almost seems like we're impugning his character or being disrespectful, but this is the internet environment in which we live, so it's something that has to be done. I'm going to debunk the easy ones first, because there are more serious and possibly true speculations that I'm going to present in a little bit that we need to consider, and those are very dark, somewhat disturbing. Be forewarned on that. And I'm not trying to offend anybody with these. If you're here, you're obviously interested in it, but I'm not trying to make light. But there's just so much going on, and it's so easy to get distracted. So we're just going to go through these, and I'm going to explain where they came about and why they're not true. And then we'll go through some of the other, I would say, more controversial stuff that could have some validity. First, the first thought and speculation is whether or not the shooting was real. Because a lot of people, not a lot, but there's a group of people that are saying it's fake. And I'll get into those later. A lot of them are groupers or people that have gone off the cue boards to such extent that they believe everything we see today is fake. Here's why they are claiming the FBI that it's fake. FBI Director Kash Patel said in one of his tributes to Charlie during one of the press conferences, he said, "See you in Valhalla." Now that's part of his tribute to Kirk, and that's an odd phrase, I admit, because it's a Norse phrase. And Charlie was Christian. It'd be more likely to say "see you in heaven." Patel follows an Eastern religion. I'm not sure if it's Hindu or another one, but he follows an Eastern religion, so it's even out of place for him to say it. Then this picture of suspect Tyler Robinson pops up, and the eagle-eye conspiracy theorists see this island. This is an island in Andalusia, and it's nicknamed Valhalla. There's even a gateway, an entrance that says Valhalla. And if you believe conspiracy theories, this is where celebrities who fake their deaths go to lay low. However, it has since come out that Patel used the phrase because it typically is used in military circles to honor slain soldiers. In essence, saying, "We'll take it from here." Patel said that also. He said, "We'll take it from here. See you in Valhalla." So this phrase in that context makes sense because it's not a religious phrase, it's a military phrase. Some are pointing to Erica Kirk's speech as proof that he's alive, and this was the beautiful speech that she gave the other night from the Turning Point office. She referred to her husband in present tense several times, and then she clarified it later by adding that he will be with us in spirit. But this is the one piece of her speech that got people all in a tizzy, claiming that everything was faked.
When I got home last night, Gigi, our daughter, just ran into my arms.
She misspoke. Simple as that. She is so accustomed as a wife, and I've done this before as referring to my father or my mother who have gone on, that you're used to saying we, our, us in her marriage, that she just did it naturally again. And like I said, I've said things about my parents as if they're still alive when they've been gone for quite a while. It's hard to break those old habits, so that's what's going on there. Others point to her post earlier that day. In that post referred to a scripture that says God is our refuge in times of trouble. And people like to believe that she thought that she knew something was going to happen that day. I submit that she and Charlie have been under stress in recent weeks, and that is the reason for her post, and we're going to talk more about what was causing that stress later. When it comes to these types of things, I tend to listen to the witnesses at the scene, some who were at the event and some really quite close to Charlie as he was being shot are now speaking out on social media about what they saw.
shot, and I saw him falling towards the left, so I knew he got shot on the collarbone or the neck right here, but I didn't see bleed immediately. I just saw and I heard, and we all crouched down, and I wish there was a better security. I was a little...
It was so loud, I thought the shooter was right there in the crowd, and apparently he wasn't. Apparently he was far off. Everybody got down, and I instantly just started praying for Charlie Kirk.
I heard the loud crack. He believed he heard a gunshot.
And as soon as I thought that, I saw Charlie's neck explode.
Bear dove into the fountain, and in the hours since that time, he hasn't been able to escape the images of the shooting.
I just watched the video for 10. It's
Something that was curious to me was that Erica posted a video of her and Charlie and the kids on her Instagram page. She posted it September 2nd with a stay tuned to September 16th date, and didn't alter it after Charlie was killed. So that confused a lot of people, because the post said "Take the journey with us," September 16th. That played into a lot of conspiracy theories about a fake death, and even that Charlie would somehow be resurrected on the 16th. However, it's coming out today, actually, that the couple was planning to announce a pregnancy of their third child on September 16th. Charlie even mentioned a short time ago that he had 3 children, when we only know of 2. And now it's going online that he texted Erica his choice of names for the baby, of a name for the baby. And that happened, that text came through to her phone about an hour before he died. Let's talk about the ring. This is Charlie's wedding ring. A lot of people had made a big deal of it because they questioned it was on his ring finger at one part when he was first speaking. Then if he still shot it the moment he was shot, it was on his pinky. It's a clasp ring, and it's very simple. He fidgets, and there's a video, if you watch it from the left side before he was shot, he does take it off his ring finger and put it on his pinky finger, then puts it back on his ring finger, and then puts it back on his pinky finger. Some are speculating that was some type of distress signal, but on that side of the tent it wouldn't really matter because none of his security team would have seen it. So I think he was just fidgeting. He was a very fidgety person. Oh, he seemed a little bit more nervous that day, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but he was always picking up a cough drop, putting in his mouth, taking a sip of water, putting the mic down, picking the mic up, moving from side to side, fidgeting with his ring. He often fidgeted with his ring when somebody else was speaking and he was thinking about what to say. He did that on Bill Maher's interview. He unclasped it, fidgeted with it, put it back on. So that's how that's explained. That's just not that interesting, or I would say important. Charlie's hands in the casket has drawn other speculations because some say they don't look real.
I can tell you that is absolutely him, and actually the exact things people are using as proof, the yellow hands, the firmness, the waxy or silicone appearance, those are classic signs of embalming. So let's break it down. The yellow coloring in his hands, totally normal in embalming. Circulation isn't happening anymore, so the extremities often look dark.
The security hand signals. Many have talked about the guy in the white hat making baseball-like hand signals with his hat and his ear, touching his ears and his hat, and the guy next to him also making the signal with his arm. So we're going to talk about the guy in the black shirt in a little bit, because that strikes me as a little bit more suspicious. But let's go ahead and answer the question about the guy in the white hat.
There's a man in a white hat and a white t-shirt standing just off of Charlie, just as he was shot. And this man adjusts his hat and then scratches his cheek. And there are conspiracy theorists all over social media, all over the internet, that are saying that man is giving signals to the sniper. But friends, I want to share the truth with you today. The man in the white hat and the white shirt is my friend, Frank Turek. Frank Turek is a man of God. He's an honorable man. He was a close friend of Charlie's. Charlie meant a lot to Frank. Frank mentored Charlie. He loved
Guy in a blue shirt with a strap around him standing next to Charlie has also stirred up questions because of this video. It shows he has his hand under his arm at the time, and it looks like he's holding something shiny, something metal, And then after Charlie is shot, it looks like he's putting it away. He turns kind of away from Charlie and then puts it away. So the speculation is that he was the one that actually shot Charlie. But as I've pointed out, from one of the witnesses, they felt that the shot came from overhead and from the front. And we also have a gentleman whose wife was at the hospital that says the same thing.
To another conversation where he also reiterated the fact that his friend's dad is a surgeon at the hospital where Charlie Kirk arrived. He was hit in the chest, which is what we saw right here. It caved in part of his chest. That's what absorbed that impact that you've seen. The bullet ricocheted up and went into the neck. Anybody that's trying to show you that there's a frame and a one frame, and oh, there's the bullet. Guys, cameras film at 30 frames per second. Bullets travel at like 500 or 900 feet per second. It would be literally mathematically impossible for you to catch a frame and actually see a full bullet. You might see a flick of something. It could have been a bee, a bug. There was no side shooter, guys. The main shooter we're looking at came from the front.
Video shows this man's face and indicates he was also part of Charlie's security team. He touches something in an odd movement here, but in retrospect, I mean, it could be just a microphone. He could have a mic here, maybe talking to the rest of the team. Questions have popped up about the guy asking the transgender shooting question at the time of the shooting and whether or not he was involved.
First off, you sick psychos that think this is the answer, it's not. I don't know what else to say. It's not. It's awful, and a father doesn't have his kids anymore. Charlie had 2 kids and a wife. And like, not to make this about me, but I have 2 kids and a wife, and if my 1-year-old boy, like his 1-year-old boy, will grow up without memories of his dad.
Wondered about Charlie's security, and looking at video from all angles, it shows who his security was, at least his immediate security. There were 2 guys in the front of the tent on the grass, and they were looking over the crowd. I'm not sure if they couldn't see on top of the roof, but they were looking over the crowd. The guy in blue with the strap was walking around to the right side in the grassy area, and the guy in the black was in the tent with him the whole time. The guy with the white hat comes over to the tent at the start of about the middle of the question about religion and Mormonism, and Charlie starts talking about his faith, and he doesn't have a hat on at first. He comes over and puts his hat on and stands next to the guy in the black. Then the guy with the blue and the strap moseys over toward Charlie also about that time. What hasn't been addressed by the security or law enforcement is why students weren't security checked as they entered the area, and why there was no ambulance or medical personnel on hand. The forensic expert that was interviewed this week on one of the shows has the same questions.
There are a lot of people, and you know, I was chatting with somebody earlier talking about video. I mean, we don't go anywhere without these doggone things in our hand, and when you go to an event like this with such a high profile subject, people are going to be videotaping everywhere. So you've got multiple POVs. The question is, how many people fled just out of fear, and they left, they took the evidence with them. You're going to have multiple perspectives, which is completely different. You know, you talk about, you know, like people thrown out the JFK assassination. You had one POV, and that was the Zapruder. Well, there may have been others, but the Zapruders, you know, nobody had phones back then, you know, to videotape these things. They're going to lock this down, and let me tell you, let me just break this down to you, because that is not the only scene you have here. This is how complex this is. So in forensics, what we teach here is that you've got primary, secondary, and tertiary scenes. So with the site where Charlie was shot, that's going to be your primary scene. The roof is a scene. Where the weapon was deposited is a scene. This guy's domicile is a scene. His car is a rolling scene.
Where did the assassin get the gun? A press conference said it was his grandfather's, and his father had given it to him as a gift years prior. The idea came out immediately after Kirk's murder that it was a professional hit, and I have to admit, when I first saw it, I thought it's got to be professional. That's pretty far range to strike immediately and hit the target. The 22-year-old isn't a professional, and that has some people questioning, but he has been shooting guns for years and was taught to shoot as a teen. That's not unusual for people living in Utah and out west. His mother has posted several, over the years, pictures of him practicing with different guns on a gun range, and those are on her social media pages, so it's not something that is unusual for him. Some have also suggested, and I think this is true, that he somewhat missed his target. He was aiming for the head, he struck the chest, and it ricocheted into the neck. And so he's not what I would call a perfect shooter, but he has done enough to know what he's doing. Now let's get to the really tough questions. Did he act alone? What was the motive? Officials state they're investigating his social network on Discord and elsewhere to see if there was a collective group of people involved in planning this. They say he was radicalized online, but haven't said by whom. I will say that I've seen in past shootings, and this was in the Obama administration, at least 2 of them. I think one was the nightclub in Florida, and I forget the other one, but it was reported at that time that those 2 shooters had been radicalized online, groomed, if you will, by a specific person online, and that has never really been pursued or investigated, come to light. And that got me to thinking a little bit about CIA plans, and are they picking up vulnerable, mentally upset people who are easy to target for this kind of thing and grooming them to participate in this. So that is a possibility in my head. I think that this could be something, and I'll go into why in a bit, that it could be something from the deep state or CIA or a foreign entity that no one, not even President Trump or Vance, who love Charlie, would know about, because it would be dark. They said that the motive, and this goes back to Robinson, that his motive in the assassination was extreme hatred for Charlie Kirk, and that the government had planned it for about a week. It would take, I don't think a 22-year-old with no military experience, no police experience, could plan this thing in a week. Yes, he'd have to scout it out. I'm anxious to see the surveillance of him scouting out the campus, because he wasn't a student there. I would like to see how he knew where to go, how he knew to get past any security. I would like to know more of that, because I find it a little too coordinated and a little too well planned to be done simply by a 22-year-old who is angry at Charlie Kirk. So we're going to have to wait and see on that video and the investigation. Most digital creators posting online don't believe for a second there was a lone gunman, and I tend to fall into that category. The murder just seemed way too coordinated to be done by this guy, especially without any military or police experience. The older man, if you remember, there was a man who claimed that he killed Kirk immediately after the shooting. That was an older man. He claimed to be the killer. They had him on the ground immediately. He was later released. He never had a weapon of any kind. Why? Was it to give the real killer time to get away? By the way, that man was arrested, and he was arrested for obstruction, but then they later found out that he had child porn on his cell phone, so he's facing those charges as well. Now let's talk about that bodyguard in black. He was always in the tent with Charlie, and I've seen lots of reels of Charlie on campus. He's always in the tent. Normally he stands to the left. This time he stands to the right. Not a huge deal. What struck me in reviewing past videos and current videos, and I'm going to put some up, is that he appeared to be nervous on September 10th. He was always checking his watch, and then he does this signal. Now if you look at the difference in demeanor between then and past ones, he seems very calm, not moving, looking over everything. He doesn't fidget or anything at all. Charlie also appeared different in the 2 videos. He appeared really nervous in Utah. He was touching his nose, touching his ring, moving back and forth. He's a fidgeter. He's always been a fidgeter, but this was more than his baseline, especially when you compare it to the previous video at another rally. He seemed a lot calmer and more attentive to the people rather than trying to disassociate himself from surroundings. A question I have, and many have, is about the black thing on his shirt. It is attached to his shirt. Some thought it may be from a gun, you know, the laser, a black one instead of a red or a blue one or green one. But he moves, so it is attached to his shirt. It could be a mic, but then he's using a handheld mic, so that would make much sense. I don't know how to explain that. No one has really explained that. It does come off in the shooting, and someone even pointed that it comes off. It comes off and goes to his chest and then goes to his neck. And they speculate that it's part of what killed him, but I don't know. There's no real physical evidence of that. Obvious, at least to me, that Kirk was wearing a bulletproof vest that has been validated by a couple of experts who had people at the hospital. The gentleman who said his relative works at the hospital said he was wearing that, and it did ricochet off of that into his neck. So he was wearing that, although some witnesses claim he wasn't. He might not have worn it earlier, tossing out hats and so forth, but when he was in the tent, if you look closely, you will see there's a little bulk under there. So he was wearing that. Megan Kelly pointed out that if the threat level was so high that he had to wear a bulletproof vest, then why didn't they have other security, like a roof check, security checks for attendees, and a perimeter check? Those attending are now posting on social media that they felt the lack of security was strange, given the crowd and Kirk's prominence. I find it strange as well. I find that there were just a lot of preparation strangeness going on with that event. This video shows the shooter on top of the roof. It was taken from an overview where people are and they could see it. So why didn't anyone notice and alert security? Kirk appeared to be, he kept looking that direction during that first question. I've seen videos, he looks up about 3 times. Why didn't he just call security over and tell him to get him off the stage? These are questions we don't know. Why wasn't there an ambulance there? Why wasn't there medical personnel there? You have that even for high school football games. There's always an ambulance and medical personnel there. For any large event, there were over 3,000 people there. I'm very surprised that the college didn't automatically have an ambulance and a medical personnel, at least for people who are dehydrated, because that happens at these things too. People get dehydrated and faint. They need a medical tent. I don't know why that didn't happen. Another question. There's also a question of why Kirk's team was contaminating the crime scene, removing cameras before police secured it, and why did it take so long for law enforcement to secure the crime scene? It took them several hours to come back and secure it.
By the Sampson reported one individual that was shot, unknown where the shooter went. And let's be advised, UVU in Orem has had an active shooter at the Charlie Kirk event. We're getting several calls. We're trying to get more information. 418 copy. How many injured do we have? Just one person.
We do have officers following the victim to Timpanogos Hospital.
Now we're getting into the spooky dooky stuff. The magazine Jezebel came out stating they contacted a coven of witches to curse Charlie Kirk at this Utah event. The other thing that's really weird is when Patel announced they apprehended the suspect in 33 hours. That struck me because he made a point of saying it a couple of times. And 33, as most may know, is a Freemason number, 33-degree Mason. Jesus was 33 at death. I did a story a few years ago and discovered that most of our major military installations are built on the 33 parallel line, and that includes Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Most UFO and other weird paranormal stuff like cattle mutilations occur on that 33 parallel line. I will also tell you that when I collected crime reports, it seemed like the most violent and bizarre criminal acts were carried out by males 33 years of age. Someone pointed out that Kirk had 3 groups of hats on a table on both sides, 3 on one side, 3 on another, with 47 on them. 4 plus 7 equals 11. 11 times 3 is 33. The fact there was a blood moon on September 7th and 8th, and that a 4.1 earthquake struck northeast Utah 3 hours after Kirk was shot, also plays into the spookiness in some theories. There are some oddities with the 33 number, the 45, and the 47 number as well. But I don't want to become too distracted with that weirdness. I don't think it's that important. I think numbers can be manipulated to mean anything, so I don't take too much of that to heart. It is strange that Patel kept emphasizing 33 hours, though. Even Candace Owens pointed out in her podcast yesterday how many times he emphasized that. Speaking of Owens, she is stirring the pots of both the political and the religious over her past 2 podcasts about Kirk's assassination. There were some statements from Kirk's wife, Erica Kirk, and Owens, who is a good friend, probably one of Kirk's best friends, indicating that more are involved.
The evildoers responsible for my husband's assassination have no idea what they have done. They killed Charlie because he preached a message of patriotism, faith, and of God's merciful love. But they should all know this. If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea.
I think in the end, Charlie was going through a spiritual transformation. I don't think it, I know it. He was going through a lot, and there was a lot of pressure, and it's hard for me to watch the people who were pressuring him, I don't know, just say the things that they're saying. You know, there's something about it that just feels really fake to me. And they would have allowed him to lose and wanted him to lose everything for changing or even slightly modifying an opinion, and then to see them doing what they're doing today, it's hurtful to me. It's very hurtful to me.
Owens clarified her statement in a podcast Monday, questioning Kirk's meeting with billionaire donors in the Hamptons in August. She said that they wanted more control over who spoke at Turning Point events. Specifically, they did not want Tucker Carlson, who is another really good friend of Kirk's, to be involved by speaking at these events. And they put pressure on Kirk over scheduling Carlson to speak.
And threats were made. It was at this time that Bibi Netanyahu was called and Charlie was invited to Israel. This was an under duress situation, I would say. And I know that Charlie was offered a ton of money in this moment. A ton of money. He would fund it, you know. Spend tons of money. And Turning Point, I guess, if it needed to go to a higher level, would have gone to an even higher level than it already was at. And I know for a fact that Charlie denied that funding. That Charlie denied, and what Bibi did include there, he declined to go to Israel.
Her story was backed up by Carlson and Vice President J.D. Vance when Vance hosted the Charlie Kirk show on Monday.
But also recognizing that so long as you're operating in good faith, we're all part of the team, and that's something I'm going to try to take from Charlie's legacy, is not that we're always right, not that we can't take criticism, but that we all should try to work together.
It did worry me, because I think your description is perfect. He was one of the very few who took that message and stood by it, I mean, right to the very end. This cannot get bigger. We don't want another regime change war. But man, some of the people who send money to Turning Point, his donors, were very tough on him. So tough on him that I could feel it. You know, I talked to him a lot in the last few months, and he was under enormous pressure. He never bent. He never became bitter.
He kept his integrity to the very end.
To the very end. And I just think it's important to say that because it's true.
Absolutely.
Was that meeting the root of the pressure on Kirk? What was the center subject they wanted control over? Well, Owen said it was Israel. What was meant by he kept his integrity? Owens flipped out that President Trump posted this picture. I will say that it's an odd picture to post after Kirk was assassinated. It feels kind of off Owens had reversed course in support for Israel, and Carson had questioned U.S. support as well in recent years. Kirk was always an Israel supporter and remained so into his death, but he had started questioning certain aspects of how the Israeli government was running things.
I'm going to be careful the way I say this. They're going to try to ethnically cleanse Gaza. I mean, I don't use that term lightly, okay? They're talking about basically removing 2.5 million people, okay? And honestly, they have a mandate to go seek justice and revenge. They do. There is this idea that they need to have a truce or a peace treaty. That's moral after you see women and children be burned alive and dragged to the streets. But there are some serious questions here, Patrick. And let me tell you, my pattern recognition over the last 5 years has become pretty sharp. COVID, Maui fires, Epstein. When I see a story and it doesn't click, our guts are usually right.
His little friend, Ghislaine, and Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, who was obviously a spy of the Israeli intelligence agencies, that there was something else going on here. Epstein was not some sort of whiz-kid hedge fund manager. Epstein was playing a part. Epstein was a LARPer. Epstein was cast for a specific role, and he played it really well. The sweatpants and the Harvard jacket, the kind of disheveled hair, looking as if he was so smart and above the clouds that he was doing advanced mathematic equations on the back of napkins. But if you actually go into some of the videos of people that met with Epstein at the time, they said he was awfully unimpressive when it came to finance and markets and economics. And it's nothing new that if you're in the intel agencies, you want to try and get as much blackmail on powerful people as possible. Easy, not hard. And this is no longer just speculation. First of all, the evidence that shows that Epstein was a creation of either Mossad, Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, Saudi intelligence, or maybe he was just a hired gun. Maybe he was just the guy that countries would go to and park a couple $100 million and say, hey, can you get one of the members of the royal family with a 13-year-old so we can get them to do what we want to do? Members of Congress are actively being blackmailed. The Epstein playbook is being used on a daily basis.
The first news report to announce Kirk's death was the Jerusalem Post. That is documented. We were all surprised when President Trump made the announcement later of Kirk's death, and now it's revealed that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made the announcement at the exact same time as Trump, which was 3:02 p.m. U.S. time. Rav, Real America's Voice, was the second to report the story right before Trump made his announcement, but that's unusual because Kirk hosted his show there. I thought it was strange that Trump made the announcement, so maybe that deserves a little bit more explanation. He loved Kirk, obviously, but there has to be a little bit more to that. Owen said Netanyahu's remembrance of Kirk during a meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio earlier this week was disingenuous. He read a line or two from a letter Kirk had sent him, and her comments in that letter stem from a meeting Kirk had, as I said, at the Hamptons home, that is the home of Bill Ackerman, on August 5th, with other influencers and donors.
Charlie was in the Hamptons, and he had more than one event, but he had essentially what was staged, an intervention was staged by Bill Ackman, because Charlie's rational thoughts about Israel were a no-no. This is not the route that you should be going on. And Charlie was surrounded by his friends, his quote-unquote friends. Bill Ackman was very upset.
Information about the meeting came from Kirk over the past month as they frequently talked and texted, and now it's coming from, being validated by, Turning Point employees who were at the meeting, and that's according to Owens. Ackerman denies all of this and said the meeting with Kirk was to discuss a new college reach effort. The retreat lasted the 4th and the 5th and included many things, including food. He goes into great detail on his ex account. Megyn Kelly, who is also a friend to Kirk and someone who has involved in her stance on Israel, discussed all of this on her show this week, stating that Turning Point employees were with Kirk at the meeting and they told her he was never threatened or intimidated. She had Kirk on her show the next day after that meeting. That show was on August 6th.
Something's happening, though, with this whole debate that is really bothering me, and I wonder if you're feeling it too. My contention here is that some in the pro-Israel camp are so knee-jerk about calling you anti-Semitic or getting deeply offended if you say anything that doesn't align with their narrative, that it undermines their own cause. And I have to tell you, I find it very irritating.
I'm so glad you brought this up, and I would second that. Megan, I think I have a bulletproof resume showing my defense of Israel both on campus, on social media, to great, let's just say mockery and scorn at times, because I believe it, right? I believe in the scriptural land rights given to Israel. I believe in fulfillment of prophecy. And again, I'm not a theologian, but I'm a Christian. My life was changed in Israel. The spiritual energy is so amazing there. I want them to win. I've said that repeatedly. And however, Megan, you're hitting on something very potent and important. Now, let me first say, I don't want to judge an entire group because there's been many people in the pro-Israel world that have been very sweet, very kind, very nuanced, very Charlie. You're with us. You don't have to agree all the time. However, and I will say this, the behavior by a lot, both privately and publicly, are pushing people like you and me away. Not like we're going to be pro-Hamas, not like we're going to, but we're like, honestly, the way you are treating me is so repulsive. I have text messages, Megan, calling me an anti-Semite. I am learning biblical Hebrew and writing a book on the Shabbat. I honor the Shabbat, literally the Jewish Sabbath. I visit Israel and fight for it.
It's very irritating.
It's
been so unfair. They were coming after you after Turning Point for, among other things, that you had Dave Smith there. Dave Smith is allowed to criticize Israel. You had both sides. The Israeli side was overrepresented.
No, you're not allowed to. It's even worse than that. Again, I just want to repeat for the 5th time. I love Israel. I want Israel to win. But my moral character is now being put into question, Megan. Not my decisions. Not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this. And I could go, you saw it, Megan. It was trending on Twitter, thousands of tweets and text messages. And if I were to be charitable and generous, I will say, the people that are attacking me are in a hyper-paranoid state because they're at war, and war tends to make things black and white, and you're a hammer looking for a nail. So I'm trying to be charitable, Megan. Literally, I'm trying to cut as much slack as I can, right? Think, okay, what would it be like if all of a sudden I'm starting to see a pattern of behavior similar to what my grandparents saw in 1930s Germany online? How would I behave? So that's like my charitable kind of overcompensation spirit. At the same time, I'm like, but it's not defensible to be dumb, right?
Yeah.
So,
and it's offensive. It's offensive to those of us who have been out there defending them in many instances against critics on our own side. And now you have a couple of comments like, well, what about this? Well, has it gone on too long? Like, is it time to wrap it up? And the thing about Epstein is just so bizarre. I don't know who he was an agent for. It might have been Israel or an asset, or it might have been nobody. But we're allowed to speculate about that. It's like there's some rule. You can't go there when it comes to Israel.
Well, you and I believe that we're Americans and Americans first, period. End of story. We are citizens of this nation. Personality types like you, myself, and Tucker, the more that you guys privately and publicly call our character into question, which is not isolated, right? Megan, it would be one thing if it was one text or two texts. It is dozens of texts.
Yes.
Then we start to say, hold the boat here.
Vance made an interesting connection when he was hosting the Charlie Kirk show, and his connection was about billionaire George Soros. He pointed to...
Now, The Nation isn't a fringe blog. It's a well-funded, well-respected magazine whose publishing history goes back to the American Civil War. George Soros' Open Society Foundation funds this magazine, as does the Ford Foundation and many other wealthy titans of the American progressive movement. The writer accuses Charlie of saying, and I quote, "Black women do not have brain processing power to be taken seriously." But if you go and watch the clip, the very clip she links to, you realize he never said anything like that. He never uttered those words. He made an argument against affirmative action as a policy. He criticized a specific Supreme Court justice as an individual. He never said anything about black women as a group. He made an argument for judging people of all races and backgrounds by their own individual merits. The very evidence she provides, this hack of a writer, shows that she lied about a dead man, and yet she wrote it. An esteemed magazine published it. It made it through the editors, and of course, liberal billionaires rewarded that attack.
Owens is also concerned about the shifting positions at Turning Point and who Kirk could be replaced with. She fears that the organization may replace him with someone big donors want, maybe someone who has a different attitude about Israel than maybe what Charlie had, or with someone that has infiltrated the organization.
To those of you who think that you are going to replace Charlie Kirk, okay, kings are born. You don't just get to depose and tell us that we're going to follow this individual, okay? I'm one of the Masons of Turning Point USA. You put a shill in Charlie Kirk's chair, in Charlie Kirk's company, and you try to tell us to follow that individual, I will be an enemy of you. There will be nothing that can stop me, okay? And I want you guys to understand, this is not a threat, this is a promise. There will be nothing that can stop me. I will release every single text message. So to those of you who are trying that, I'm seeing the messages, I am telling you to back off right now.
Of those possibilities that could be playing into her concerns are two people falling into, well, I would say suspicion. That's Nick Fuentes and Ben Shapiro. The Fuentes video that I'm about to show is appalling. I'm not going to show all of it. It's just disgusting. Now, this video came out long before Charlie died, but it kind of shows what he did.
It's just a matter of time. My ideas are already there. I've already impregnated your organization. I took Turning Point USA and I fucked it. I took your organization, I took your baby, Turning Point USA, and I fucked it. And I've been fucking it. And that's why it's filled with groypers. That's why you're...
Groupers are a subsect of political people who are totally against government. I would call them anarchists. They thought Kirk was too tame. Now, the liberals will say that the groupers thought Kirk was a fascist, but that's not true. They actually thought he was too tame. They infiltrated one of the Turning Point events over the past year or so, caused a lot of trouble there. In Fuentes' defense, he does have a link to the American First community group on his X page. Here is some of what he posted after the assassination. I'm just going to read some of this, and you can decide for yourself. This feels like a nightmare and one of the most horrific things I've ever seen. I feel absolutely gutted and devastated. Pray for Charlie Kirk's soul, his young family, and for the country. Release all the information about the assassin and his Discord contacts. Everyone must be investigated. My followers and I are currently being framed for the murder of Charlie Kirk by the mainstream media based on literally zero evidence. After the left gunned him down, they celebrated and justified it. They said I was next. Now they're blaming me for Charlie's death he's talking about. These people are pure evil. At that point, Owens responded, Charlie died, but Nick's the victim. Just STFU, Nick. Stop grifting off his death and shut up, you perpetual victim. Fuentes then said another digital creator, Hassan Piker, should be banned from Twitch and deported back to Turkey for everything he said about Charlie. That name was also brought up on Turning Point as someone who has perpetuated false information about Kirk. Regarding Shapiro, he pops up because he's going to colleges now. He has a tour planned, and similar to what Charlie Kirk did, and he is Jewish and avid supporter of Israel. However, he was planning on doing college tours anyway. he's done them before. He was doing them before Kirk started doing them, and he said he was doing them now in remembrance of Charlie Kirk, and calls Charlie Kirk a good friend.
And we're not going to be deterred. Charlie's voice is not silent. We're going to pick up that blood-stained microphone where Charlie left it. We will not stop telling the truth. We will never stop telling the truth. We will never stop debating and discussing. We will never stop standing up for what America is and for what she should be. And we will never let Charlie Kirk's voice die.
Shapiro and others from his organization, the Daily Wire, were on the Charlie Kirk show this week, and it was announced that the Daily Wire is donating $1 million to Turning Point to continue their mission. One thing from those at the Daily Wire and others have pointed out was that Kirk was destined to be president one day, and they felt that killing him now was an attempt to, and successfully, change that future and prevent us from having someone like him as president. Kirk has many connections and did a lot of things behind the scene that I had no clue about, and I'd been watching him for quite a while. He was the one who pushed for Vance to be vice president. He was the one who worked coalitions to support Robert Kennedy Jr. as the Health and Human Services Secretary. He also worked to get Tulsi Gabbard in as DNI director and several other cabinet members. He thwarted a negative PR campaign against Susie Wiles, who was at that time Trump's campaign manager and who later came on to be the White House Chief of Staff. So, now, what to say? I'm going to wrap this up. What do I think? I definitely think there's a spiritual component to this. All of these things happening at the same time isn't a coincidence. Candace was right when she said it was a battle of good and evil. And I will say, with all the spiritual aspects, there were at least 4 ministers who prophesied that a shepherd would die. And they used the verse that a shepherd is struck down and his sheep are scattered. But then they said immediately after, a shepherd will be struck down, but his sheep will not be scattered. They will be united. 4 of them. 2 that I remember offhand are Mark Taylor and Joseph Z. There are 2 others that are lesser known that I don't remember the names to, but they all said the same thing. In fact, one of them said he preached that sermon at a Turning Point function 2 months ago, and he didn't pick that verse for any particular reason. It was inspired to give it, and now that he looks back, he feels like it was a bit prophetic that he chose that particular verse about the shepherd being struck down, and that when that happens, the sheep must bond together and unite rather than being scattered. I am also hesitant to think that Robinson acted alone. I'm not sure how far-reaching this is, but I wouldn't be surprised if the CIA or even a foreign entity was involved. I'm not going to speculate on that. I do think that Robinson did fire that shot. I have not seen any evidence that has been solid enough to make me think otherwise. My dad, who worked in the highest levels of government, often talked about people like JFK, Robert Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. and their assassinations. He did say, and he told me, I grew up with him saying this, that there was a shadow government, and they will watch people as they grow in influence, and they will let them grow in influence, but only so far. When someone grows in influence where they cannot be controlled, and they have a lot of people behind them, that's when they cut them down. I believe that's what happened to Charlie Kirk. He grew too powerful and could not be controlled. He couldn't be controlled with money. He couldn't be blackmailed because he lived a good life, and he couldn't be enticed with fame. There was only one thing they could do. And now all of us are feeling the pain of that loss and of a future loss. But I will offer some hope. Yes, Charlie Kirk probably, most likely, would have been president one day. But I do know this about God. When one person is struck down, God raises up another. And I've already seen young preachers, teenagers, preachers in their 20s, step up and fulfill the role that Charlie was doing as far as spreading the gospel. So I have hope that God will raise up another. He did that in the Bible, and He will do that now. I am putting all this together to help us make sense of this so that you're not overly confused by the massive intake of information. And as the trial goes on and the investigation moves forward, I'll probably be updating, probably more on this channel than the other channel. Depends on what happens. I hope this podcast gives you some understanding as to what all may be involved in the Kirk assassination. It could be a lone killer, but it could be something deeper, and we have to prepare ourselves for that. Time reveals all. If you haven't already subscribed to this page and liked this video, I know some of you may have already subscribed to the other page I have, but not this page. You need to go ahead and subscribe to this page too. I don't flood you with spam, but it will notify you when new things come up. I plan on doing very deep takes on this page on issues like Epstein Island, the elections, and so forth. And then the other page is more up-to-date news on a couple of different topics. And for those that want daily, pretty much up-to-the-minute news, maybe not daily, up-to-the-minute news, you can go to my Facebook page. I do live streams there, and that's the events that happen that day. So you can keep up with all that. Subscribe, like my page. That helps me out so much. And I will talk to you later. Until we meet again right here next time. Peace, everyone. Have a good evening.